Millionaire hired a fake date for his ex's engagement, but she became the real headline. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The rain had just started to fall over Manhattan when Ethan Ward stood by the window of his corner office, the city lights shimmering like fractured stars on the glass. He had everything that defined success, power, money, a name that carried weight in every boardroom. Yet at this moment, none of it could quiet the ache in his chest. Tomorrow, his ex-fiancée was getting engaged to his former business partner. The tabloids called it the society wedding of the season. For Ethan, it felt like a headline written to mock him. He tightened his jaw, looking down at the invitation card still lying on his desk. His assistant had slipped it there earlier with a single sentence. "You might want to make an appearance, sir." He was not planning to. Not until pride whispered that staying home would make him look broken. And Ethan Ward never looked broken. That was when the cafe door opened across the street from his building. He noticed the girl by accident, Mia Collins, a part-time waitress who had once spilled coffee on his suit 2 weeks ago. She had apologized a dozen times, her hands trembling, her eyes full of sincerity that felt almost foreign in his world of rehearsed politeness. Tonight, she sat alone at a corner table, counting coins beside a folded hospital bill. Ethan walked in without a plan. The bell above the door chimed softly. She looked up, startled to see the same man in a tailored navy coat, the one who had insisted it was just coffee, not a crime. "Mr. Ward," she said quickly, half embarrassed, "can I get you something?" He hesitated for a breath, then pulled out a chair across from her. "Actually, Miss Collins, I have a proposal." Her brows knitted in confusion. "A proposal?" "A business one," he clarified. "Tomorrow night I have to attend an engagement party. I need someone to accompany me. Someone real, not from the usual social circle." He paused. "You will be compensated for your time." She blinked. "You mean, you want me to pretend to be your date?" "That is the idea," he said evenly, sliding a slim envelope toward her. Inside was a contract and a check already signed. 3 hours of your evening. No personal questions, no strings attached. You help me get through one night, and you can walk away. Mia stared at the numbers, her heart pounding. $50,000. That was more than 3 months of tips and double shifts combined. Enough to cover her mother's heart surgery that insurance had refused to pay for. "I do not understand," she whispered. "Why me?" Ethan looked at her for a long moment, his voice lowering. "Because you are not pretending when you speak. People in my world, they always are." The hum of the espresso machine filled the silence between them. Mia's fingers brushed the edge of the contract, trembling slightly. "And if I say no, then I will find someone else," he replied calmly. "But something tells me you will not." She looked down again at the hospital logo printed across the top of the bill. Her throat tightened. Maybe it was foolish, maybe it was desperate. But desperation was all she had left. "Fine," she said finally. "I will do it." Ethan exhaled softly, almost relieved. "Good. The event starts at 7. My driver will pick you up at 6 sharp. Dress code black tie." "No." He stood, buttoned his coat, and added, "One more thing. Read the contract carefully, especially the last clause." After he left, Mia unfolded the paper. Clause 6. Emotional involvement strictly prohibited. Her reflection wavered in the cafe window, half lit by passing traffic. Somewhere behind the glass, the rain kept falling steady, quiet, and full of promise that nothing about tomorrow night would stay pretend for long. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the tall windows of Ethan's penthouse, painting the marble floors in gold. The city below was already alive, horns blaring, coffee carts steaming, but the suite was silent. Ethan stood at the kitchen counter, black coffee untouched, the signed contract lying beside it. He read the line again. Emotional involvement strictly prohibited. He almost smiled. It sounded simple enough. Yet something about her eyes last night, nervous, determined, had stayed with him longer than he expected. At exactly 6 o'clock that evening, his driver pulled up outside a small apartment complex in Queens. Mia stepped out, clutching a black clutch purse, her borrowed dress hugging her frame. It was simple but elegant, a midnight shade that made her look older, steadier, as if the city's noise could not touch her. When she opened the car door, Ethan looked up from his phone and froze for half a second. "You look different," he said quietly. She gave a shy smile. "You mean not covered in coffee?" His lips curved. "That too." He extended a hand, guiding her inside. The smell of leather and cologne filled the car as the city lights blurred by the window. For a while, neither spoke. Then Mia turned, voice hesitant. "Do you really think this will help you? Showing up with a stranger?" Ethan's eyes stayed on the road ahead. "It is not about her. It is about showing them I have moved on." "And have you?" she asked softly. He met her gaze in the reflection of the glass. "I will after tonight." The hotel was already glowing with chandeliers when they arrived. Reporters gathered outside, cameras flashing like bursts of lightning. Ethan stepped out first, the calm mask of a man used to being watched. He offered his hand again, and Mia took it, her fingers trembling slightly as they walked toward the grand entrance. Inside, laughter and music swelled. The air smelled of champagne and polished money. At the far end of the ballroom, Clara stood radiant in silver, her hand looped through her fiancé's arm. When her eyes caught Ethan's, the smile on her lips faltered. For a brief second, time hung still. Mia felt the weight of every glance as heads turned their way. Whispered voices followed them like a trail. "Who is she?" "She is stunning." Ethan finally brought someone new. Ethan leaned close, his voice low. "Just smile. You are doing fine." She nodded, forcing a calm she did not feel. When a reporter approached, shoving a microphone toward them, Ethan's arm slipped easily around her waist. "Mr. Ward, can you tell us about your lovely companion?" Mia's pulse quickened. Before Ethan could answer, she smiled brightly. "We met by accident," she said. "He spilled his coffee. I saved the day." The crowd laughed. Cameras flashed faster. Ethan looked at her, surprised, then played along. "Yes," he said smoothly, "and I have been trying to repay that debt ever since." For the first time that night, he felt something real, a flicker of ease, a laugh that was not practiced. As the evening stretched on, Clara approached with her fiancé. Her tone was sweet, her eyes sharp. "So, Ethan," she said, "you did not tell us you were seeing someone. What is her name again?" "Mia Collins," Ethan replied before she could twist the knife. "And yes, we are together." Mia met Clara's gaze and smiled with quiet grace. "Congratulations on your engagement. You look beautiful tonight." Clara blinked, thrown off by the sincerity. The conversation died, and Ethan felt a strange pride swell in his chest. When the band began to play, he leaned close and whispered, "You just disarmed an entire room." She laughed softly. "I am just trying to survive the night." But as he led her to the dance floor, his hand warm at her back, both of them knew something had already changed. The music rose, the lights dimmed, and for a few stolen moments, their world felt completely, dangerously real. When the last notes of the song faded, applause rippled through the ballroom. Ethan and Mia stepped off the dance floor, his hand still resting lightly on her back. She could feel the steady rhythm of his breathing, calm and controlled. A man who had learned to mask everything behind quiet confidence. Yet when he looked at her, his eyes were softer than before, unguarded for a heartbeat too long. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of champagne glasses and polite conversations. Ethan guided her through introductions, to investors, to board members, to people who had once whispered behind his back. Each time she spoke, her voice steady and warm, the look shifted from judgment to curiosity, from curiosity to admiration. He watched, secretly amused, as she won them over without trying. Later, in the limousine, the city rolled by in streaks of gold and shadow. Mia leaned her head against the seat, exhaling. "I do not know how you do this," she murmured. "All the smiles, all the pretending." Ethan glanced at her. "You did not pretend. That is why it worked." She turned her face toward him, the streetlights flickering across her features. "Worked for you, maybe? But for me, this was survival." He hesitated. "Because of your mother?" Her breath caught. Surprised, he remembered. "Yes. The surgery is scheduled for next month." "I could not say no to you, not when that money meant she might live." "No." The honesty in her tone hit him harder than he expected. He looked away, jaw tightening. "You should never have to buy your way out of pain." The car stopped in front of her building. The driver opened the door, but Ethan spoke before she could step out. "Keep the dress," he said quietly. She frowned. "Why?" "Because you wore it better than the world that made you borrow it." For a second, neither moved. Then she nodded, a small, shy smile breaking through. "Good night, Mr. Ward." "The wall." "Good night, Miss Collins." The next morning, Ethan arrived at the office early. The city skyline stretched pale against the dawn, but his thoughts were anything but clear. He should have felt triumphant the evening had silenced gossip, impressed investors, even unsettled Clara. Instead, all he could think about was Mia's laughter echoing through the ballroom, and the way her hand had fit perfectly in his. He reached for the signed contract again. No emotional involvement. The words now read like a dare. That evening, he called his assistant, Claire, into his office. "Send flowers to Miss Collins," he said. "Nothing extravagant, just something simple." Claire raised an eyebrow. "From you personally, or from the company?" He paused. "From me." Mia returned home that night to find a small box at her door. Inside, a white lily and a note written in neat, bold handwriting. "Thank you for reminding me what real looks like. E.W. Oh." She sat on her bed, the city lights spilling through the window, her heart beating too fast. This was supposed to be a transaction. 3 hours of pretending, a signed contract, an exchange of money in silence. But somewhere between the first dance and that quiet car ride home, something had shifted. She held the note, her reflection flickering in the window. "No emotional involvement," she whispered. The rule already felt broken. Across town, Ethan stood once again by his window, the same skyline stretched beneath him. The city never slept, and neither did he. Somewhere out there, a waitress who had no reason to trust him had made him feel human again. He exhaled slowly, the corner of his mouth lifting. Maybe for the first time in years, Ethan Ward was beginning to wonder what it would be like to stop pretending. 2 days later, the sound of rain returned, soft against the glass walls of Ward Capital. Ethan sat in the boardroom surrounded by executives, but his focus was elsewhere. Every slide, every chart, every discussion about expansion blurred together. The only thing that felt real was the echo of a voice that had no place in this room, a girl who laughed without calculation. After the meeting, he lingered by the window, phone in hand, thumb hovering over her contact number. He had typed it the night after the gala, then deleted it twice. Reaching out to an employee over a personal matter was already against his rules. Reaching out to a woman who reminded him how to feel was even more dangerous. Still, by evening, he found himself walking into the same cafe where it had all begun. The bell above the door chimed. Mia was behind the counter, hair pulled into a loose ponytail, a coffee stain on her apron. For a second, she looked startled, then cautious. "Mr. Ward," she said, straightening, "I did not expect to see you here again." "I was nearby," he replied, though they both knew it was not true. "Thought I owed you another coffee, a proper one this time." She hesitated. "You do not owe me anything. You already paid me." He smiled faintly. "That was business. This is something else." Mia studied him, then poured 2 cups anyway. The warmth between them was quiet but undeniable. They sat near the window where the rain streaked down the glass, soft and rhythmic. "How is your mother?" he asked finally. "She is better," Mia said. "The doctors moved up her surgery. Your check cleared faster than I expected." She paused, eyes flicking toward him. "Thank you for that." He nodded, his tone low. "You do not have to thank me for something you earned." For a moment, silence settled again, broken only by the hum of the espresso machine. Ethan leaned back, studying her. "I have a question," he said. "If you could start over, what would you do?" She blinked. "Start over?" "Yes. If money was not a problem. If you could be anyone, anywhere." Mia looked out at the rain, thoughtful. "I would paint," she said softly. "I used to. Before. Well, before life happened." He smiled, intrigued. "You still could." She laughed under her breath. "Not everyone gets to start over, Mr. Ward." He leaned forward. "Maybe you just need the right person to believe you can." The words hung in the air longer than he intended. Mia looked down, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. "That sounds dangerously close to emotional involvement." Ethan exhaled, a quiet laugh escaping him. Then maybe the contract was flawed. She looked up at him, something gentle and unguarded flickering across her face. "You do not strike me as someone who admits to flaws. Maybe I am learning." The clock on the wall ticked softly as the rain lightened outside. When she stood to leave, Ethan reached for his wallet and pulled out a card. "There is an art exhibit opening next week at the Met I have an extra ticket. If you come, we will call it repayment for the coffee. She took the card, her smile returning. I will think about it. When she walked away, the cafe felt quieter. Ethan sat alone, staring at the empty cup across from him. The contract was still in his desk drawer, but the rule it carried had already been rewritten somewhere between a dance floor and a rainy afternoon. Outside, the rain stopped completely, leaving the streets glistening. For the first time in a long while, Ethan Ward felt like something new might begin. Not a performance, not a deal, but something that could finally be real. The night of the art exhibit arrived with a cold wind sweeping down Fifth Avenue. The museum glowed like a crystal palace against the dark sky. Ethan waited by the entrance, hands in his coat pockets, trying not to check his watch again. He had told himself this was just a casual invitation, nothing more. Yet when he saw her approaching through the crowd, he forgot how to breathe for a moment. Mia wore a simple ivory dress, her hair pinned loosely at the back. She looked elegant, but not polished in the practiced way of Manhattan society. She looked real alive, warm, slightly nervous. Ethan's chest tightened as she smiled. You actually came, he said softly. You invited me, she replied. I figured refusing a billionaire twice might be bad luck. He laughed under his breath, offering his arm. Shall we? Inside, the exhibit hall shimmered with light and murmurs. Paintings stretched across tall white walls, colors blooming in silence. Ethan noticed the way Mia's eyes lit up as she walked from piece to piece, her fingertips twitching slightly, as if she longed to touch the canvas. You really miss it, he said quietly. She nodded, voice low. Painting used to make everything else disappear. For a while, it was the only place where I could breathe. Ethan studied her, then asked, What stopped you? Life, she said simply. Rent, bills, sickness, responsibility. They do not leave much room for art. Oh, he was silent for a moment. Then he said, Maybe they leave just enough for courage. When she turned to look at him, her eyes softened. You talk like a man who wants to save people. He shook his head. No, just someone who is tired of watching good people stay small. Their conversation was interrupted when a familiar voice called his name. Clara approached, her fiancé in tow, her diamond earrings glinting under the lights. Ethan Ward, she said sweetly. You never miss a headline, do you? I see you brought your companion again. Mia stiffened, but Ethan's expression stayed calm. Yes, he said evenly. Mia Collins. She is an artist. Clara's smile sharpened. Really? How charming. You do have a talent for charity work. The words cut, quiet but cruel. Ethan felt the old anger stir, the same that had once made him lose his composure in front of board members and tabloids alike. But before he could speak, Mia beat him to it. I suppose everyone has their version of art, she said, her tone even. Some create beauty, others collect it. Either way, it says a lot about who we are. Clara blinked, momentarily speechless. Her fiancé tugged her arm, muttering something about champagne. She left with a forced laugh that echoed behind her. Ethan turned to Mia, astonished. You handled that better than I would have. She smiled, though her hands trembled slightly. I have spent my whole life serving people like her. I learned that silence only feeds them. He looked at her for a long moment. You are remarkable. The music shifted to something softer, a slow instrumental that filled the space between words. For the second time, Ethan held out his hand. Dance with me? Mia hesitated, then placed her hand in his. They moved slowly between the marble columns, the crowd fading into a blur. Ethan felt her heartbeat beneath his palm, fast and fragile. I thought I was done pretending, he whispered. Maybe you are, she said. For the first time in years, he smiled without effort. Around them, cameras flashed again, catching the image of a billionaire and a girl who did not belong to his world yet somehow belonged to him. Neither of them noticed the woman across the room snapping a photo with her phone, her expression sharp and calculating. By morning, that photo would be everywhere. By sunrise, the photo was already spreading across social media feeds and news sites. Ethan Ward's scene with mystery woman at the Met Gala. CEO's new romance sparks rumors of secret engagement. Ethan's phone would not stop buzzing. Reporters called his assistant. Bloggers speculated. Investors demanded statements. What had begun as a quiet evening had become a spectacle overnight. In the middle of the noise, Mia woke to find her small apartment filled with notifications. Her face was everywhere smiling beside Ethan beneath the museum lights. The comment section burned with words that cut deep. Gold digger. Actress. Fake charity date. Her hands trembled as she scrolled, heart pounding. She had known there would be attention, but not this. Not lies twisting the truth, until even she began to doubt what had been real. A knock came at her door. She opened it to find Ethan standing there, dressed sharply as always, but his expression raw, his eyes shadowed by exhaustion. "I am sorry," he said the moment she opened the door. "I did not expect it to spread like this." Mia crossed her arms, trying to steady herself. "You did not expect the press to follow a billionaire? That seems naive." He exhaled, guilt flashing across his face. "You are right. I should have warned you. I should have protected you." Her voice shook. "You cannot protect someone from humiliation after it happens, Mr. Ward. My boss already saw the photo. People at the cafe will not even look me in the eye. I am the girl who sold herself for a paycheck." Ethan's jaw clenched. "That is not who you are. Maybe not to you," she whispered, "but to everyone else, it is exactly who I am." For a long moment neither spoke. Then Ethan said quietly, "Let me fix this." "How?" she asked bitterly. "With another contract? With money?" His eyes lifted to hers. "With the truth." He left before she could answer. That afternoon, at Ward Capital's headquarters, cameras flashed as he stepped to the podium. Dozens of reporters filled the room, microphones raised. Ethan took a deep breath. "You have all seen the photographs," he began, "and the rumors that came with them. Here is the truth. Yes, Mia Collins accompanied me to the engagement party and to the art exhibit, but she was not part of a publicity stunt or a revenge scheme. She was the most genuine person in both rooms." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Ethan continued, voice steady. "I hired her initially under a contract, but somewhere along the way, I realized I was the one pretending, not her." He paused, letting the words settle. "So if you want to talk about deception, talk about mine." When the conference ended, Ethan disappeared from public view, shutting down all interviews. The internet went wild again, but this time, something shifted. The story became less about scandal and more about the strange honesty of a man who had nothing to gain from telling the truth. That night, Mia sat by her window, the city humming outside. She had watched the press conference 3 times already. Each time, her chest ached a little more. Her phone buzzed one new message. From Ethan Ward. Subject: one last conversation. She stared at the screen, unsure whether to answer. The storm he had unleashed had cost her peace, pride, and privacy. But beneath all of it, one thought kept returning. When he looked into the camera today, he had not looked like a man saving face. He had looked like a man finally telling the truth. Outside, the rain began again, tapping softly against the glass, steady, patient, waiting. 3 days passed before Mia answered his message. She agreed to meet him at the same cafe where everything had started. The place was quieter now, the chatter low, the smell of roasted beans heavy in the air. Ethan sat at their old table, looking nothing like the untouchable CEO from the headlines. The tailored suit remained, but the composure had cracks. His eyes were tired, his posture subdued. Mia walked in wearing her work uniform, simple and practical. No makeup, no jewelry, just herself. When their eyes met, the silence between them felt heavier than words. "You came," he said quietly. "I came to say what should have been said a long time ago," she replied, sitting across from him. He nodded. "Then say it." Her hands folded on the table. "What you did at that press conference, it was brave. But it does not change what happened. You exposed your own lie, yes, but you also exposed me to the entire world. I did not ask to be in your story, Ethan." "I know," he said softly, "and I hate that I made you part of it." "Do you?" she asked, her voice steady now. "Because sometimes I think you needed me to play that role to prove something to yourself." He looked down. "Maybe I did. Maybe I needed someone honest enough to make me see what I had become." Mia exhaled. "You are not a bad man, just one who forgot that other people bleed too." He looked up, pain flickering behind his eyes. "You make it sound like I am beyond repair." She shook her head. "No one is beyond repair. But some damage takes time. And distance." Oh, for a long moment, they sat in silence. Then Ethan said, "I stepped down from Ward Capital yesterday. I am starting something new, a foundation for independent artists and small creators. It will help people who never get the chance to be seen. Mia blinked, unsure she had heard right. Why tell me this? Because it was your idea, he said. You talked about painting, about wanting to breathe again. You reminded me that wealth means nothing if it cannot lift someone else. Her eyes softened, but she looked away. You do not need my approval, Ethan. He leaned forward. I do not want your approval. I want your trust back. Mia hesitated. Her throat tightened. Trust is not something you ask for, she said. You rebuild it. He nodded slowly, accepting the words like a sentence he already knew he deserved. Then I will rebuild it, piece by piece, however long it takes. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the street washed clean. Mia rose from her seat, picking up her bag. I hope you mean that, she said quietly. I do, he answered, more than anything. She gave him one last look, sad, searching, but not hopeless. Goodbye, Ethan. He watched her leave, her figure reflected in the cafe window, until she disappeared into the crowd. For a long time, he sat there, unmoving. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, the original contract, creased and faded. He unfolded it, found the final clause, and with a steady hand, tore it in half. No emotional involvement, it read once. Now, it was nothing but fragments, scattered across the table like ashes. Ethan leaned back, the weight in his chest lifting just slightly. Maybe love was not meant to be controlled or signed into agreement. Maybe, for the first time in his life, he finally understood what it meant to let something real begin on its own terms. 3 months later, the headlines had changed. Ethan Ward, once the face of corporate ruthlessness, had become the center of a quiet revolution in the art community. His new nonprofit, the Ward Foundation for Working Artists, had begun offering grants and free studio spaces across the city. Critics called it reputation repair. But those who knew him or had once met him saw something different. They saw a man finally at peace with himself. The foundation's first exhibit opened on a soft spring evening. Sunlight spilled through the wide glass panes, turning the white walls gold. Paintings lined the gallery, bright, imperfect, alive. Ethan moved through the crowd, greeting guests and sponsors, yet his eyes kept drifting toward one particular corner. There, standing quietly beside her painting, was Mia Collins. She wore a simple cream blouse, her hair tucked behind her ear, the way she always did when she was nervous. The piece she displayed was small but arresting, an abstract cityscape, all storm and light, titled Pretend. Ethan approached slowly. When she noticed him, her breath caught. I was not sure you would come, she said softly. I told you I would rebuild it, he replied, piece by piece. She looked at him for a moment, eyes uncertain. You named this whole event after me, did you not? The Collins Grant Program. I saw the brochure. He smiled faintly. I did not name it after you. I named it after what you reminded me to be human. For a while, they stood together, saying nothing. People moved around them, but the noise faded into a distant hum. Ethan's gaze lingered on her painting. This is your first public work, he said. How does it feel? Terrifying, she admitted, but honest. He nodded slowly. Honesty suits you. Mia hesitated, then asked, why did you invite me tonight? Because I wanted you to see that something good came from everything we broke. No. Her voice softened. And what about us, Ethan? Did anything good come from that? He met her eyes, unflinching. You taught me that love cannot be a transaction, that it cannot be signed or timed or justified. So yes, something good came of it. She studied him, and for the first time in months, she smiled, not the polite smile she used to hide behind, but the quiet one that reached her eyes. I am proud of you, she said. Even if we never see each other again, I am proud. No. He exhaled, the weight of years of control leaving his body. That is enough for me. But before she could turn away, a voice from the stage interrupted the moment. The event's host called for Ethan to say a few words. He hesitated, then leaned close and whispered, Stay. When he stepped up to the microphone, the room fell silent. Ethan looked out at the sea of faces, artists, patrons, dreamers. His voice was calm but filled with emotion. This foundation is not about redemption, he said. It is about truth, about finding beauty in imperfection. Every brushstroke, every scar, every failure can still become art if we have the courage to own it. His eyes found Mia's in the crowd. Someone once reminded me that pretending is not living. So tonight, I want to dedicate this exhibit to those who stopped pretending and chose to be real. Applause erupted. Cameras flashed. Yet Ethan did not look at the audience. He looked only at her. Mia's eyes glistened, her smile trembling as she clapped. The room blurred around them, but that moment, quiet, genuine, and earned, felt like the first honest page of both their stories. The night moved on, but something unspoken lingered in the air, delicate and unbreakable. The contract that once divided them had long turned to dust, replaced by a truth neither could deny. Sometimes the most powerful promises are the ones never written down. The night of the exhibit ended, but its echo lingered long after the crowd had gone home. When the last of the guests left, and the lights dimmed, Ethan found himself walking through the quiet gallery alone. The air smelled faintly of paint and roses from the evening's bouquets. His steps echoed softly against the marble floor, until they stopped before the small painting titled, "Pretend." Met. He stood there for a long while, tracing the brushstrokes with his eyes, the colors shifting from storm gray to soft gold. It was her story, their story. A reminder that even the messiest beginnings could turn into something beautiful if seen in the right light. A faint sound made him turn. Mia stood at the doorway, her coat draped loosely over her shoulders, a hesitant smile on her lips. "I thought you would be gone by now," she said. "I was about to leave," he answered. "But then I saw your painting again. It felt wrong to walk away without saying goodbye." She stepped closer, her heels quiet against the floor. "Goodbye does not suit you, Ethan." He smiled slightly. "No, I suppose it never has." For a moment, they just looked at each other. No audience, no noise, no pretense, only the steady hum of the city outside and the pulse of something unfinished between them. "I heard your speech," she said softly. "You meant every word." "I did," he replied. "Especially the part about not pretending." Mia's eyes glimmered. "Then what now? Do we just go back to our separate worlds?" Ethan took a slow breath. "Maybe we do. Or maybe we start a new one on equal ground this time." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was not a check, not a contract, but a folded card. On it, handwritten in clean black ink, were 5 simple words: "For the gallery you will open." She stared at it, stunned. "You want to fund my studio?" "I want to help you build it," he said, "not as a favor, as a partnership. You once told me that art was how you learned to breathe. Maybe this is how we both start breathing again." Her voice trembled. "You really believe people can begin again?" "I believe we already did." Mia's smile deepened, tears catching the light. "You are impossible, you know that?" He chuckled softly. "So are you. That is why this works." She took the envelope, her fingers brushing his. "Then we have a deal," she said. Ethan shook his head gently. "No deals, no contracts, just us." Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the city slick and shining. The two of them walked out together, their reflections merging in the glass doors as they passed. The night air was cool, carrying the smell of rain and spring. At the edge of the sidewalk, Ethan turned to her. "You once said emotional involvement was prohibited," he murmured. "What is your rule now?" Mia looked up at him, eyes bright. "Only one," she said. "Do not pretend." He smiled, then truly smiled, and reached for her hand. She let him. They began walking down the quiet street, the lights of the gallery glowing behind them, like a promise fulfilled. And as dawn slowly touched the skyline, two people who had met in a moment of desperation found themselves stepping into something real, proof that sometimes the best stories do not end with a contract, but with a choice. Theirs was no longer a performance. It was love, unguarded and alive, written not in ink, but in every act of honesty that brought them home to each other.